right, what is up, everybody? NFT Pirates back at you again with the one and only NFT Flenny. We go way back. OG's in the house. Good to see you, bro.
Yeah, man, good to see you as well. Back in, we're actually also March OG buddies, I believe, right? You started your account in March as well, March 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey, and I'm really I really want to thank you for having me on, man. It's always a good time talking to you.
Bro, you too, man. And thank you for having me on your channel as well, which I think you told me before this interview started, which was like almost a year to date now. Yeah. Which is crazy, right?
Super close. Yeah, just a days off. And also, I did want to say, I did want to thank you for even coming on, bro, because back then I was just starting my channel. Like, you've always been like one of the top dogs in the, content creator community. So I just want to say it was really cool of you to, take the time and talk to, just like talk to me back then when I was just getting going. So yeah, man.
No,
thank you for that.
You had so many good thoughts, and like, there was so much stuff that you would comment on Twitter and stuff. And I was like, man, this guy, he knows what he's doing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I made a little bit of a spark to be like, dude, you got to do your own YouTube channel as well. I'm sure there's other catalysts, but
for sure. We, before I started, we were DMing. I would DM you for like advice, like collectible advice, and just what your opinions were. And then, I mentioned to you that I was considering starting my own channel. And you're like, yeah, bro, totally go for it. Like, I'll support you. And so I like you and DeGale, I would say definitely have been like were my two biggest inspirations for starting a channel. And like, even like give me like the confidence, like the motivation to do it. So, and then also like, I didn't even tell him that, but DeGale was one of the first people to like comment on my videos. So yeah, you guys have both been with me from the very start. So yeah, you guys will always have a special place in my heart.
That's super cool, man. And shout out to DeGale.
Definitely.
He's getting like, he's got a lot more projects he's invested into as well that he's like really knowledgeable about. So if you haven't subscribed to him as well, go check him out. And bro, thanks so much, man. Like, that's so cool to hear that. And like, now I imagine, how many people that you might have started as well. Like, there'd probably be other people that reached out to you and started their own YouTube channels. And one thing that I just looked at, it was like, the other day I was just searching through all these new YouTube channels that I've never even heard of that have like 2-3K subs that are pretty big channels right across the world. And I'm like, there's probably at least, back in the day it was maybe 50 tops. Now there's at least like probably 500 out there. Like,
I would say so. Yeah, there are always some I see pop up, and like I'll end up watching. I'm like, this is great content. Like I haven't, for like whatever reason, I haven't happened to heard of this person, but I'm like, they're making great content, like different perspectives, different video editing styles, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it really is, man. And one thing that was so funny too is like we talked about having the interview last year, almost a year ago, and the same conversations existed then. Like, we were talking about like, when's the MCP coming out? When's OUP coming out? Like, I think MTL and maybe one other thing changed, but for the most part, it was like the same conversation and pretty much the same market as now.
Yeah. Like back then, it was in October, so it wasn't the November, December Disney hype yet. Prices had gone up a little bit since we started, but it wasn't like it hadn't gone ballistic at that point. And then now it's still like big way down from the all-time highs. So yeah, you're right on the market conditions for sure.
It's crazy, bro. And like, then you think that with this Star Wars drop coming out, that maybe we would get lucky and get like only 1,500 editions or something for one of the TIE fighters.
We could hope.
Yeah, what's your take on this drop? I'm not sure.
I think what they are themselves are super cool, and it's something that I think we've all like really look forward to. I know when I was really just going deep into VeVe research, I remember there was like a leak or maybe like something someone found of like a little cutout. You could like make out that it was a pod racer, and that was before like Disney or Star Wars or anything had been announced. And so people had like found like dug up a pod racer, and that was hinting that we had Star Wars. So like now actually like seeing them like come to fruition, it honestly is still surreal. But with that said, with the current market conditions, with just how the app and everything is going, it seems a bit too expensive, or more than a bit. It seems a lot too expensive and way too many editions, in my opinion.
I know, right? And I remember the video you're talking about. Like, I think Hello K and Cavell Anderson back in the day. And probably probably shoot me if I didn't say that it was him that found it first, but yeah, I just remember them like going crazy and being like, hey, this is already in the bag. And back then nobody thought that it was real, because I'm like, okay, it's already set to get Marvel, it's another set to get Disney, and then Star Wars, come on, right? So yeah, that was a bit of a stretch, but I hear you, bro. So are you still collecting hard, or like what's going on? Are you kind of taking a back seat, or what's going on in your world?
Oh man, I've slowed down so much, especially since we last talked. And basically, like what I do now is I just either, if I see a good deal, I'll stock up on something that I just know will be good, like some Disney, some Golden Moments, some Star Wars. But for the most part, as far as like drops go, I really only go if it's a significant first edition, first appearance, or just if I think it'll be historically significant. But yeah, I mean, almost everything, unless it's the rarest edition, or I mean, even sometimes the rarest goes under retail. So if I really want something, I'll likely get it on the market, or if I think it's an FA too good to pass up, then like that's when I'll do drops.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. I could understand that for sure. The hard part is now too, is like, I'm not sure when the bottom's going to happen. So I'm not sure if it's like we're at the bottom, or if the bottom is 2023, or the top is going to be like 2023. Like it's a lot of like unpredictability. Like I know that with this market currently, it's going to take a huge amount of like energy to move all the inertia that we have.
So much. So much. It's like a whole tidal wave.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's going to take a lot to move it. But at the same time, like, I don't want to speculate if, for instance, if like Vader's going to go to like $600 or $400, or if Walt's going to go to like 3.4 or 3.2, where in the long run, like those numbers will probably be like laughed about, you know?
Right, exactly. It's like, oh, like I could have got Bitcoin at like my goal for Bitcoin was 800, but it only got to 1,000. You know, like way back in the day. You know, it's like now like that makes no difference whatsoever. Like essentially. But it's like back then, you know, it was a big enough difference to maybe sway someone away. But now when it's, 20, 30, 40K, like that's such a small difference. So yeah, but like, all the macro conditions, the macroeconomics, everything, I personally think, I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but just from my observations and just listening to some other people, it seems like we have maybe a bit of a ways to go down still, just with how the whole world is kind of shaken out. But yeah, I definitely see what you mean, and it's really hard to time it. And I've just a lesson that I've learned a lot from my whole VeVe experience is just patience. And before, I was just at a mad dash. I was collecting everything. I was trying to finish every set. I mentioned that a lot in my videos. And now I've really learned, like, okay, there will be more opportunities. There will be, more chances to get what you want, or for something better to come. And I know if I would have just been a bit more responsible and just maybe not gone as hard, I would have more capital, more money to invest now, because except for a few grails that I've gotten on drops, such as Walt or Fantastic Four #1, I honestly, even though I started so early, even though, by the way, have you still waiting for your first secret rare comic?
No, I got one, but it was
okay,
like
you got
something
one.
Like She-Hulk or something,
Oh,
like,
man. Yeah. Yeah, nothing like the first few drops, unfortunately. But yeah, yeah, it's just, except for a few of those grails, I honestly would be better off on most things if I would have started today than like a year ago, which is kind of crazy to think, but it's the reality.
It's the reality, right? And the hardest part too is like, I keep talking to everybody keeps reflecting back on these moments, and they think they're never going to happen again. And it's like, oh, I should have sold, when my vault was like 1.2 mil, 3.2 mil, whatever. And the only thing I could say is like, there's a reason that, Omi is coming out and saying like, you're going to be able to rent your NFTs out. Like, that is a pretty big thing to say if you don't have, the potential to back that up in the future. Like what, like, unless there was some kind of crazy incentive to actually buy these things at least $1 a piece for a day, then, why would you put that in there to begin with? If we were talking like cents, right? Like, I feel like they know a lot of things that we don't, and they're slowly unraveling it all, and I think what people have to understand is like, patience is key in this situation. And like, when we just think about like the significance of some of these collectibles, like 1,000 editions only, first appearance on the blockchain of a like super popular character, if we do have some kind of interoperability, or if we do have these in the VeVeverse or even the metaverse, it's going to matter. It's going to matter despite what people's current thoughts are. Like, when we're all doing that stuff digitally, like there's no way it can't matter. Like, how could it not,
For sure. No, that was a very good point that you brought up, and something that I've been thinking about a lot, because right now renting seems so like outlandish. It seems like why the heck would anybody pay any amount of money just to have a collectible in their vault that they can put it in like in AR, for however much time. But like, exactly like you said, how much, especially Dan, has been talking about it and pushing it. Like, I think that they know well, they obviously do, but they know a lot more than we do, and they can see the future and like where it's going. And just if there's any kind of utility attached, like the example that I always use is like, if Walt gets you into Disneyland for free, like say a family, they're just vacationing for the weekend, they don't live near Disneyland or like Disney World, they're there for the weekend, they could renting it off of me could maybe save them money, like to get in, and then I don't have to fully give up my collectible, and then and that way everyone wins. And so I think even something as simple as that, like let alone the metaverse and all these new VR and AR things that we've been seeing, like I really think that they have something in store because of how much they said it. But right now it's hard to imagine, but that's the whole fun of this whole space, is that we're so early, the tech is so early, and it's just impossible to imagine where it's going to go. Like 5 years ago or so, like TikTok was not even a thing, or if it was like like just, I think it might have been still music or whatever, but like now it's the most popular app, the most used app. It's where like a lot of the the most memes and popular videos and viral things come from. And so just in that short time, we can see how much like social media has changed. And so I think like when we get further into the tech and just how the world adopts NFTs and blockchain, it'll make a lot more sense, become a lot more picture as to why someone would want to rent or use these digital assets that might be hard to envision right now.
So well said. Like, I think that's the issue that we're having, is like this stuff is kind of so far out there that right now you're like, okay, people are focusing on just like buying food and getting gas. And here we are talking about like the implications of like the metaverse and like what rent would look like, right? So it's just like a lot of the world can't relate. And I think that's like why a big reason, like why people on VeVe, not to say everybody's like well off, but I mean, you must have had a little bit of excess money to be able to go and spend it on these things that are more speculative. Even if you didn't, like you're thinking it was a big investment, but I agree with you completely. Like, I think that like where it's headed is huge. And the way that I look at it is like, I look at an NFT and I'm like, okay, what utility could it actually provide? Like when I look at Spider-Man Secret Rare, I'm like, what would be like the max utility that could provide? Okay, maybe I get free access to movies. Maybe I can enter like the Marvel metaverse. Maybe I have like clout. Maybe I can like get to clubs, but like with like Walt or like any kind of Disney item, I think like ahead, because I'm like, okay, there's a theme park there. There's like a lot more movies. It's more encompassing of all of Disney. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, and then when you look at like artists, I'm like, there's only so much an artist can provide for you for like utility. You can meet them. They can maybe sign things for you. They can maybe have a really small like house party,
Right.
But
right.
like, can they get you into a Disney theme park? And so like, that's where I'm like, my mind goes. It's like, okay, like what is the potential utility? And not to say that it's like guaranteed, but it's like nice to speculate on that part.
For sure. And there's also been something that I've been kind of thinking in like the opposite. And I'm thinking like, okay, like, say an NFT gives you access to a game. It's like, I wonder how much companies would want to close off certain things to, a lot of people. Like if it's okay, only these 3,000 people can do this, like they're like restricting their market and their consumers by so much, unless it's very like exclusive or particular things. But I kind of wonder, like, how much would they want to incentivize like a select few, like an elite club of people, to be the only ones who can access certain things? And I've kind of been trying to think about that, like how will companies, because like for us, it's cool to imagine, oh, we'll have my collectible will let me do this, but it's like if you're thinking about it from the company's perspective, it's like I'm not sure if they would want to exclude a lot of people. You kind of see where I'm coming from? Like,
Dude, I actually love
sense?
that point. Yeah, so yeah, and I think like that's a great point, because if I think about Disney, like their main focus is like accessibility, inclusivity, equality. And so like you said, if they're just saying like, oh well, it's only these like 30,000 holders or these like sub 1,000 holders of like Disney Golden Moments, like get this, then it wouldn't be fair. But I think like what I think could be happening is like if you just own a Disney NFT, then you get like maybe general access into the metaverse or something.
Right.
And then when it becomes like more of like these more prized possessions, then you just get like a higher tier access, I guess, similar to like how Club 33 is in Disney World or whatever. But like, I think like what you're saying is like everybody needs to win. And I agree with you. Like, I don't think they can just, like you said, just have like select, 15,000 people that are winning and yeah.
Like, oh, you can only play our video game that we invested $5 billion into, only if you hold it, only if X amount of people hold this collectible. I'm sure they'll be like, I'm sure it would more likely work out like, you gain extra access or you get a special ability, you know, it probably wouldn't be closed off. But a lot of how people talk about it, I kind of thinking like, I'm not sure, like for us that would be cool, but I'm not sure if that's how the companies would want to approach it.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think like the thing about like the speculation still about all this utility added is may not necessarily be the best way to go about it either, because I think like collectibles is where this kind of came from. Like there's a collecting, and I think like that's the hard part is like, can you appreciate this asset just as much without the added utility in the future, even though it's like still maybe probable that it would come. But it's like that's kind of where I get interested. And the other thing that I want to pick your brain about is like, I keep thinking to myself, like over time, if people don't learn about like collectibles or blockchain significance or the importance of first appearance on the blockchain, things like that, that like new graphics, new features, and more like, I don't know, hot items, so to speak, like future NFTs could like actually completely cloud over the importance of some of these significant assets. Like there's always going to be a place for people like us that will appreciate this kind of stuff. But I wonder if like the majority of people are just going to follow what like Kim Kardashian does or LeBron James does or Logan Paul does and not really give a shit about like the first appearance stuff, you know?
Exactly. Like I know you're a big Pokemon guy, a Pokemon background. Like aren't some of the most popular cards like not even the first, like they're popular, like they're valuable because of other reasons?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of it's pure scarcity, but there's a lot of things like that are old, that are like prototypes, that like, you know, I'll give you an example, like some of the ones like in 1998 that came out were like part of these people that were, you know, given if they won like a tournament as an example, and there's like only like, you know, very few of them. And then you have like the Charizard, like a shadowless first edition Charizard, which was from the first booster pack. And there's actually a lot of, well, there were a lot of them, but there's not that many like high grades of them, and they still go for a lot. But you're right, like a lot of it's scarcity as well, not necessarily like there's like Black Charizard and a Black Star Charizard, or sorry, Gold Star Charizard and a Gold Star Rayquaza that came out like 2006 that are like, you know, $25,000 and $40,000 respectively. And it's like, that was, you know, technically 8 years later, you know what I mean? So it's like,
right.
You don't, yeah, like you said, like there's a lot to it. Scarcity plays a big component, but it's also like the community behind it, the popularity of, like there's so many things that are still unforeseen, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I think a very important thing to go forward is that like VeVe or like whatever platform is distributing these is like they make a point, you know, like I think VeVe did a really good job like having the FA tag, or you know, just like tagging things and just making it clear and not leaving it up to like doing your own research and seeing the drop dates and which blockchain it was on first and everything. So I think if they make that metadata or just the information accessible and make it very clear, I think that would really help the value of the first. But yeah, like you said, like if blockchain technology, if it always like if it's not like a thing that the masses of the population like learns even like in decades, if it's still kind of like something that's hard for people to grasp, yeah, like they're not going to be like watching these videos and reading these books, understanding how it all works, and then doing extra research on top of that to see what the first actually was. And then you have different blockchains, you know, like say in 10 years something's come out on Solana or whatever, you know, like if someone, are they going to care enough, like okay, it was on a different blockchain first? It's just a lot of ways it could go, and a lot of ways that it could get clouded. But I do think just if they make it clear, like tagging it, then that would really help the value a lot.
Man, yeah, I love what you said there, because you know what, I said like ETH whatever has some kind of insane heyday in 5 years from now, and then all of a sudden Cardano, Solana, Zilliqa, and all these other ones start popping up, and then those are the emerging blockchains. I mean, it's doubtful, but you never know. Like these are the type of questions that, you know, we have to ask ourselves now, right? It's kind of like There is no kind of guarantee as to where this goes. But you know what I'm thinking, man, is I really believe this. It's just like how we have Go Collect and we have like CGC and, you know, PSA and Beckett and all these grading companies in the physical world. The way that I imagine the world of digital NFTs and collectibles is that there will be new emerging companies that analyze metadata and actually then give them significance. So like, you know, right now we have people like creating slabs, and it's like kind of fun, it's cool. I really think there'll be like a registered company in the future that will be able to actually verify like first appearance, and almost like just something like how Twitter gives you a blue check mark, like they did for VeVe. I could see them doing the same thing for like a digital asset. Like this is actually first appearance of like Mickey and Walt. You know what I mean? and then be able to like, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I was gonna say like that was a great idea. Like I hadn't thought about that, but there is a lot of value in knowing those things and making it clear and accessible. And because like I wouldn't know crap about comics, but Go Collect helps me, decide whether a comic is valuable or not, or why it's valuable and this and that. So yeah, I think that information will be like sought after enough that people will want to know it. And yeah, I think there'll be a demand for that for companies or whatever to end up providing that information. I haven't considered that, but I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think somebody watching now is probably like, "Oh, let me start this."
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, exactly. The only issue I would foresee is the amount of scams that would happen and the amount of ways to verify it on all these different blockchains. Like, for instance, like, if we go to like, I don't know, let's say Wonder Woman or something, like VeVe would be like, "Oh, well, we had it on GoChain." I'll be like, "Okay, well, can you provide that data?" And then Palm would come out and say like, "Oh, well, we got it first actually on whatever network," or Wax would come out with something else. Like, there would be like a lot of like, it'd be like tough to actually identify which one would hit first and like what it meant and the type of ownership. Like I think, Superstar Money did an interview with Quid, and I'm going to be doing an interview with him as well. And I think Cavell and a few other people as well. But what they talked about is like the levels of ownership. So like a CryptoPunk, you actually get like the full hashtag, everything's like on the blockchain. It's like other things are like, tiered ownership, where you don't get the whole asset. It's like VeVe is more like a tag. Like, you have the VeVe asset, and like the ownership is just showing the metadata that like you have this number and this number.
Right.
So it's like where does it all go? To be able to actually quantify it and be able to provide value in that quantification is still like a very hard thing. I don't know.
For sure. And yeah, it's funny, we're just talking about like a lot of parallels between our last talk. And yeah, we're talking about like Palm at that time had just come out with their first DC NFTs, and they're being marketed as the first ever DC NFT. And then I think you said it perfectly, because I went back and like listened to it, and you're saying like, it's like a marketing thing, it's a technicality thing. Like, technically they're right, because DC and DC Direct are different. And I think that can cause some it can make it be convoluted, or just it might be hard to say what the true first was, and it could be like open to an interpretation for whoever is like grading it or whatever like they decide. Because I've been seeing some like, I think it's Funko Pop has been like releasing NFTs, and like I'm on their Discord server or whatever, and like I just get notifications. I haven't really been on it, but I'm seeing a bunch of like characters come out. I'm like, is this the first appearance of this character like as an NFT? And I'm like, I just start wondering like, man, there's so many projects that I'm not keeping up with because I'm mainly on VeVe, and I'm like, what if there's like a ton of people don't know about VeVe. You see a bunch of tweets from even people who are deep in Web3, like, imagine when Disney does this, imagine blah blah blah, and like they're just completely unaware of it going on. Like, am I unaware about something else, about something going on somewhere else? Just because I'm so like deep into VeVe, or I just haven't found it yet. So it's, I mean, that like that's part of being a pioneer, I guess, right? In the space is there's no roadmap, there's no way, like we can't look and see history. It's just we're paving, and we just got to and just make our best educated guesses.
That's it. It's pure it's pure speculation for the most part. I mean, it'd probably be the similar kind of discussion that would happen back in like the 1960s when all these comics were coming out, and they're going, well, do you think this monster could be a something? And they're going, well, I don't know. It's like Hulk doesn't look like much. I think like, this looks like it would really take off. Maybe there'll be a future movie on this. Oh, well, guess what? I'm going to throw those 10 Hulks I just bought down the toilet because I don't really know what the future is. And then they, and so here's the other thing that I keep talking about too, is like, maybe like new IP on the blockchain and things that like will start to catch fire will really be like the things that win, because maybe we're kind of leaving this physical world as well. And as much as like these characters and stuff are important to people, they're almost like important to like older people in some senses too. Like there's a lot of new things that could emerge on the blockchain, like in 10 years from now, like, kids games, shows, characters that then would like override or almost like outdo a lot of these things that we thought could be sustainable forever. So it's like, how, and then you got to think like, will these companies always still relevant? Like, and I think they will. Like, I mean, you see how progressive Disney is already, and even doing things like with that are still controversial, for instance, like with they them pronouns, right? Like that, so it's like you would presume that they would at least take a stab at always being like ahead of the pack but again, like we can only speculate. And anybody that says to me, oh, I know this NFT is going to be worth X amount, I'm just like, okay, like there's no guarantees. Like we can't guarantee something like that. We could talk about like the likelihood, but for anybody that says like this is going to be $1 million, like, come on, you know?
Exactly. And just like with all that being said, the reason I'm so heavily invested in VeVe and why I make videos and all that is because I genuinely believe that like this is the best chance for things to succeed. And I think just having everything in one place, tons of IP, like, and just the team alone, you know, Dan, David, Reese, they're also passionate, they're experienced, and I really trust them to, even if, you know, maybe there's a little bump in the road, they can correct course, and they could maybe, if, you know, VeVe starts like losing some popularity ever, you know, I trust that they know what to do to get it back on track. And, you know, there's no guarantees in anything in life, and especially not investments into NFTs, but like I'm really confident that this is like the best chance to succeed.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, the way that I see it is like, imagine, you know, a physical toy store, there was only one of them, and they had like all of the emerging characters and all of the best things, the first of all these action figures and comic books all in one place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, that's not how I see VeVe right now. It's like, I'm kind of like, okay. And the crazy part is too, is like, I think when the majority of people find out about VeVe, like everything's going to almost be dropped. Like there's not going to be, like, people are just going to competing for the things that are already out there, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And I guess that's the same with like what it would have been with like comic books. Like once people are like, oh, I actually want to get AF-15. Oh, I want Hulk #1, is when like the movies were popular. And then like, you know what I mean? And those people, like, which were probably far few in between back then, that actually kept them in pristine condition, could then sell them or decide what they wanted to do with them, right? So it's just like, I don't know, like I think like that's the world we're in right now, you know, is like this part where if you're convicted and you understand the space, you understand where we're headed, like you're in a really good place. But if you're still like not sure, then you know, you can make some big mistakes right now.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, I would say I've even made a few mistakes, even with how plugged in I am. And just, as I mentioned earlier, just like investing so much at the beginning and not having as much, I forgot if that was before we started or not, but yeah, just like going so hard at the beginning, and I would have been able to invest so much more now when things are so much cheaper. And
yeah. I know. And this is the whole thing that I actually talked about from the beginning, was like the saturation aspect. Like the more and more NFTs we have and the fewer and fewer users, then essentially like, you know, people are just, you know, going out of one collectible into the next. And then, you know, the rush and the market action is lesser. And especially now that we have a lot of significant, you know, FAs. So I think we really are waiting for like those new users. And I don't know, like I doubt, just with the current, like we talked about with the world right now, like that we're going to get a lot of new people in to like help with like the market situation. But, you know, I think Rob Stuff said it best. He's like, you know, when people are like, screw VeVe because I bought this wallet at whatever it is, $35,000, like VeVe priced it at 333. You know what I'm trying to say? Like they had nothing to do with what people thought it should be worth or wanted to pay for it. So it's like when people are mad at VeVe, it's like, well, like they literally had no part in this. If anything, they gave you a chance to buy it on the secondary, which is like, you know, maybe a lot of other platforms wouldn't have had, you know what I mean? So it's like that alone is a great opportunity. So I just find it interesting, like how people think about it, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see like some of the reactions, like almost like VeVe owes them profit, or, you know, owes them return on investment. And it's like, you know, the market decides it, you know, like they can help things out, you know, like for example, the Star Wars drop we're talking about, like they could make it more valuable by making it like less editions and everything, but like they're here to drop digital collectibles and, you know, to put these out, and not necessarily to just make their users money, because, you know, someone has to buy it from somebody. And like, you know, it's just, if that's your mindset, I think you're going to be disappointed a lot.
Dude, you make a great point there too, because like that's the other thing too. Like, okay, so on one side of it, VeVe's trying to, let's say, entertain and ensure like their users are happy. But what if on the other side, you know, Disney has expectations and they're like, we need whatever, like to make 200,000 this week or something. Like I don't know like what's going on behind closed doors. So it's like when people come out and they're like, oh, I'm so mad that this is happening. Like maybe their whole argument is like, okay, well, we have to save some vehicles for the master collector program. We want to also save some vehicles for later. We want to do this first drop. We've got to make X amount, and we've got to keep our users happy. And, you know, so it's like this. So when people are like, oh, just drop scarce things because right now is a bear market and like we want to make money, it's like, well, like, guess what, guys? Like, that's just one piece of the puzzle here. Like, we have so many things that we're doing. And I think that's the problem, is like, we just see it from one side. You know, we're just casting rocks from one side of the river, and not necessarily like understanding like the full scope of what's happening behind the scenes. And that's interesting to me. You know, it's like kind of like similar to how like they knew about Disney for like 3+ years before they actually like released that they had Disney. And it's like that whole time we're like, oh, it's just DC, oh, it's going nowhere. And it's like, you only knew, right?
Right. Like they could have made us, you know, so happy to announce it way back then, but you know, it would have gotten in the way of actually being able to roll it out. And so like they could have made their users happy, but it would have kind of sabotaged their Disney plan, or like, you know, so, and like that goes with a lot of things. So like Disney might have some kind of, or like, you know, any licensor might have some kind of like grand plan for what they want to do with these, you know, like for the lightsabers and for the, you know, for the ships and everything like that. And there's a reason why there's so many, but like, it might not make sense to us right now, or it might not be good for our investment right now. But when they want like a mass user base to be able to like have access to, you know, 10,000 fighters, then, you know, that will come handy in the future. But right now it might not make sense to us.
Exactly. You know, it's kind of like we're not understanding like what the fourth dimension is, because we're only in the third. Like that's kind of that's how I hope to think about VeVe, is like they've got a lot of other things happening behind the books, right? That, and it's crazy because like not that I'm close with a lot of people, but I do know Reese quite well, like from the beginning, just because we helped out with like a tournament. We did like a meme tournament. I don't know if you remember that, like last year.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And it was a lot of work, right? It was like, we just did it voluntarily just to kind of help out with the community. And that's kind of how I got close to Reese and a few others. And like, you know, Reese shares nothing with me, and then things just happen. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, like, you know, he's like, couldn't tell you that. Or like, you know, like they're very good at like, you know, keeping their cards close to their chest. And like the thing that I keep saying, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, is we've got Disney NFTs, and then they're coming out with their metaverse, right? And a lot of people have been looking at the updated terms and conditions. I don't know if you saw it, but how some assets could be traded off platform or something.
I have seen that, yeah.
So who knows, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of seems like an inevitability, to be honest with you, at some point in the future, especially with how much Disney has talked about and teased at a metaverse. Like they're going to want their assets in their metaverse. Like there's no way around that. It's just a matter of, I guess, what would matter more for us as VeVe users is like if it can be a back and forth thing, or if it's like completely removed from VeVe and now you can only have them here.
Right. But why is this such a hard concept for people to get their minds around? Like a lot of times, like I hear just so much FUD about people being like, oh, like there'll never be, just similar to how they said there'll never be a cash out, there'll never be actual NFTs. Then we get on IMX, we get MTL. And now they're like, oh, they'll never be in the Disney metaverse. And I'm like, well, it seems pretty likely that they would. Like, I just couldn't imagine a company with the integrity of Disney and the size of Disney risking like not taking these assets over, or not acknowledging that these assets exist.
Totally.
And then like also to think that like they all are like sensitive and important IP. Like we're not getting stupid things. Like it's not like we're getting like some third tier character from like Pocahontas. Like we're getting like the best of the best, you know?
Oh yeah, they came out the gate swinging with the golden moments. You know, at the first drop, like boom, Simpsons, Elsa. You know, like I'm forgetting the order, and then like, you know, like within 1 week of Disney coming out, first appearance of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse. Like they were come out swinging. And if you think they're gonna just leave all that IP behind, like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think, like, because I just keep thinking to myself, like the writing's on the wall. I mean, I still, again, it's speculation, nobody knows for sure, but like there's a gut feeling that I'm like, okay, this is not making sense that we, you know. And then on top of that, you know, them ending the Disney golden moments kind of made me think too, like, okay, what's that about? Like why, you know, like clearly there might be like an actual plan for these, or, you know, I don't know.
Have you seen that that clip of David at was it Comic-Con or Decon London or something? Someone asked him if there could be an airdrop or like utility for holding the entire collection, and he was like, "Oh yeah, definitely." Like it seemed like it was so matter of fact, And it's like, I feel like closing it off makes it a good way to do that. And, it's just I really like them doing that, just to give, closure to the set, and just knowing, okay, like if you collect all these, you have it. And just going back to what you're saying about just how like Disney being so involved with the IP and the metaverse and everything, I believe it was the Superstar Money and Johnny Dunn live stream that you were on, and I was laughing because you were saying like I doubt Disney's going to take just this like few year detour on VeVe and just be like, we're actually not gonna use those all that much or at all. It's like now we're gonna completely just correct course and go a whole different way after dropping our most valuable IP for the last few years on here.
Right. Exactly. Like it'd just be crazy. And I think the big thing too is like you'd have a mass hysteria from like the entire VeVe community, which again, I don't know if that's 250,000 users or 2 million users. I mean, put it this way, maybe there's 2 million people that signed up and bought something, but like, your active core fan base would probably go crazy. And then on top of that, like that would probably make headlines and all that stuff. And it's like, that would just be such a bad look and image for Disney. And it's like, why also, like you said, like, imagine having two executives sitting there. And I think I made this joke. I wrote like a post on it. I was like, imagine if there's like Jerry and Barry that like are Disney executives, and they're like, hey, do you think we should like drop our NFTs, our best NFTs ever on VeVe that are like limited and scarce, and they were the first to the blockchain? And like, and then somebody's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Like, do you think they should be part of our metaverse? Well, no way. Why would I think that? Right?
Yeah,
like, I mean,
it does not follow.
Yeah, it just doesn't make much sense, right? Like, so it's like that. Again, I'm like, it's pure speculation, but it's just like, that's like almost like two magnets, man, like coming in together, and then you just can't repel that. Like that just, it's like you'd be idiotic to think that like they didn't have some kind of collaboration, at the minimum, right? Like going forward, right?
For sure. And I mean, even if VeVe gets completely like removed from the picture and you can only access them in Disney's metaverse, like, although that would suck for VeVe, and I want VeVe to succeed and everything like that, like we still have had the chance to collect these when they first came out on VeVe, and that will continue to be the case until they make a clear shift, if they do, away from VeVe, but like in the meantime, we're getting the opportunity to just stack these up, especially when like there's hardly anyone, paying attention to us with these market conditions.
Yeah. And why ruin something that's doing so well? Like if it's not their expertise, like, I mean, you got like some of the top collectors in the world. I mean, like look at David Yu, like who knows everything about this, who has warehouses full of collectibles, advising on Disney and be like, this should be the edition size. This is how we get people to be crazy about this. And like, obviously he can stand up and be confident in what he's doing, because he got, like probably some of the most users in the world on this NFT platform. Like I forget exactly what we ranked when we were on like an all-time high, but it was pretty much Bored Apes, and VeVe was up there as well with like a few others. And
so like the trading volume or something like that.
The trading volume was like, I forget what it was, but do you remember what the
I don't remember the number, but I remember it being like up there with with some of the most heavily traded things.
Yeah, and then one of the most, like the absolute almost making the most money. Like it was up there with like other streaming services and stuff as well, right?
Oh yeah, certain big drop days, it was like number one in the entertainment category or something like that.
Exactly. So it's like, imagine if like they had just 10x of the users, like it would be all over the world, right? So there's a lot of like really strong positives. The cool thing for me is like, I'm so confident in the project and what these mean, that like even with like people leaving or flooding the project or whatever they want to say, like I don't feel like worried, like I'm not like especially if you're calculated and you're smart about how you're using your money. Like I'm not a gambler, so I'm not going to go in there and like be like, oh my god, let me put 25,000 on Vader URs right now because I've got to it's gonna moonshot, baby. Like that's not me. I'm just like, okay, like yeah, you might not think so. Yeah, Vader might go down a little bit more, but hey, I think like in the grand scheme of things, this is going to be an amazing piece, right? So yeah, like I don't know how you feel, but are you kind of like a little bit worried? Like, do you think if like VeVe kind of like continued to bottom out, you'd be like, okay, that's it for me, or would you just see that as like another opportunity?
I would see it as an opportunity, and like I think like when I see it FUD like that, I honestly like I don't like that it like spreads and it might dissuade some people, but I honestly kind of like it because I just see it as people just like completely misunderstanding the vision and where the project's going, and it just makes more room for people like me and you who truly believe and see, or think we see it at least. And if it even gets a fraction of where we think it will be, like we'll be sitting pretty, and we'll be the ones that are sitting on the stack of the most valuable digital IP.
Yeah. And the fun part of these NFTs, man, is like the constant analysis and like the ever-changing landscape. Like I was thinking about it today. I was like, there's so many metrics that, like, even if I created, like, let's say a ranking chart, it would be so complex that like I would actually never be able to like hone down on all the things that like could make an asset pop. Like I'll just give you an example. Like we have like blockchain significance, we have like the popularity of that character or that item, we have like whether or not it's been released before, we have the collector base, like are they largely in crypto already, we have the edition size, we have things that could potentially hinder it, like if like something in the culture changes, like you see it like with like basketball players all the time, or professional sports players, if they like get an argument with their fiance, or like they've raped somebody and they go to jail, like all of a sudden the card will drop significantly. Like so there's just so many things that you can stack up, probably like hundreds of different metrics, and even then you wouldn't necessarily be able to get like the proper read, because Logan Paul could just come in and be like, holy fuck Pikachu, and then like you just totally are, you know what I mean? Like your charting system just got screwed, and that's the world for you.
Totally, man. I felt that so much during 2021, because I'm seeing, like, I've been trying to tone down the negative talk on the profile picture NFT projects, but because there are some good ones, but I think the vast majority of them aren't so good. But anyway, I would see like these random things just like selling for like, oh, sells for 300 ETH, oh, so blah blah blah, sells for $1 million, and then I'm like, we got freaking Disney. Like, why is that not selling for? I know like we couldn't transact in ETH, but like, why isn't that selling for the same as a little pixelated thing that gets you access to a Discord? Like, it did not make sense to me. And like you said, just like like Logan Paul or someone, just any random factor. Like we're over here like, okay, scarcity, first appearance, blockchain, and then just like this wrecking ball comes out of nowhere. It's like, hey, actually it's this. And then everyone goes there. It's like, well, like we put in the most like thought in the calculation, but then it comes in, it's like, I guess that's popular for whatever reason. But I really do think that like with the maturity and the development of VeVe, of like NFTs, the blockchain, metaverse, blah, 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 I do think that like next bull run, I have a good feeling that we'll be in the prime position for these to be like, what the Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks were of the last bull run. But yeah, that was a great example of just someone just come in and hype it up for whatever reason.
Yeah, and especially with such scarcity, like it's really easy to manipulate like a certain market, right? And that's the thing that like really worries me, is because I'm like, oh, there's only 1,000 editions of something, you get like just 10 high rollers in there, and like they all pump it, big profiles, big followings, like all of a sudden that thing goes to the moon. So that's kind of a freaky part about it. And I think the other piece too is like with Bored Apes, it's like IP that you can actually use for your like advantage, like that guy that opened like a burger restaurant, as like this stuff is like stuff that's already kind of existed, and like it's more of like kind of sharing it. But at the same time, it's like, and I've said this before, this is why I'm so keen on blockchain, is blockchain is like a permanent ink, it's like a stamp, it's like kind of like the treaty, it's like kind of the how things are formulated, like it's like it will never die out, as long as blockchain is here, like that will matter, as like utility, features, graphics, culture, hype, all that shit changes every few years. Like what if in 50 years the utility from Walt doesn't really matter anymore, because like most people are in surrogates, or like taking fucking space shuttles and trips to space, and like what I'm trying to say, like there's better things. Sure. I don't know what 50 years looks like, and it's like, but again, Walt came out on the blockchain at what time? Like that doesn't change. You can't change that. It always gonna matter. And so that's why I think like VeVe is so ahead of the curve in that regard. But now what you kind of scared me was like with Funko Pops. Like if you got some Funko Pops making some dents, like, and they're like first appearances of shit, like kind of reminds me like Hero and Flash, right? Like Flash came out with Hero first, but like nobody really talks about it. But that's that, like, you want to talk about first appearance in any medium, like that's the case.
Right. It's honestly really confusing. It's like I mean, we even kind of see it in like in a smaller sense on VeVe, like the Disney lenticular cards, they're technically FE, but they were the first time that those characters came out on the blockchain. But then it's like, okay, does it need to be like an actual digital collectible, like not, it's like instead of a card? Does it, like Hero, it's a trading card, right? Like Flash is on a trading card. So it's like, okay, are they going to differentiate between just the first time it ever appeared anywhere, or the first time it's a collectible? Or there's just like, there's so many different ways that it's just hard to imagine what the consensus will be. And like we mentioned earlier, even though, you know, people like me and you could know for a fact that something was first in the blockchain, you know, perception is reality. And if the public perception is that it's not, like, it might as well not be in terms of value. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, the crazy part about our world today is that like a lot of people follow people rather than companies. Like they believe in what they say. So it's like, you know, I think like Ronaldo, for instance, is like closing in on like 500 million followers on Instagram, which is like, you know, if you think about a 1/16th of the world population, I mean, I don't know how many of those are bots, but like, you know, you like whatever he does is gonna like, you know, so if he has an NFT that he comes out with and it's some platform nobody's ever heard of, like it would almost beat out any other NFT platform just by his one like message alone or one post on Instagram. You know what I mean? And like,
Right.
and that's the crazy part is like sometimes, you know, things can defy logic, and it makes me wonder sometimes, like I said, I think like the collectability component will always matter, and there'll always be people like us and maybe a larger net of people like us that would be interested in this stuff, but it may not be, you know, the ultimate winners in terms of like return on investment or like money making opportunities. Does that make sense? I don't know.
For sure. Yeah. It's like, um, it kind of makes me think of when we talked last time, I was really like going hard on sets and everything, and you were saying that you were more so going for like, you know, just like the best of the best, like Todd or like Superman, like you were just stacking up multiples of the best, and I was going for the sets, because at that time I thought that holding sets would give me additional benefits that could like compound on themselves and everything. So we had two different ways of thinking, and you know, they both had their own valid reasons, but it's like you can't, like, you're not sure how it's going to play out, and just any like any wrench in it, or just how it ends up playing out, can really dictate the value a lot.
Exactly, exactly. And it's really hard to make logical decisions when like you want something that's like really like for instance, like if you want AF15 SR for 15,000, like, you know, it's amazing like having that collectible, and there's a lot of social capital going wrong, but then at the same time, like with $15,000 on VeVe, you could do a lot of damage if we ever hit another bull run, right? Like if you stack up on the right thing, just like what we saw, like Todd's when they're $200, Superman when they're $70, their all-time highs was 14K and 9K. And it's like, that would have been an easy thing to like, or even Pride was like, I think, you know, it came out at $90. It was like 200. And then it went to like 270 in the aftermarket. Remember that? Yeah. It was like 270. And I remember it was so funny. I bought one for my mom at 270. And then it dropped down to like 220. And I'm like, Mom, just never sell that. I'm like, trust me, it's going to hit at least over 10,000. And she sold it like the next day or something like that.
Oh no.
Because it went to like 320. I forget exactly, but I was like, but it was just funny because back then you're making those like, oh shit, I bought it at 270. Damn, it's down to 220, which is $50 loss. But in the grand scheme of things, if you hold that, that's a $17,800 gain, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why when you're looking at those like little price points, like you got to start like just like kind of seeing the big picture. Like, and that's what I'm saying now with like the bottom of the market. Like we're, you know, even if it goes down even more, like a few $100, you know, the potential for it to go up is way bigger. So like, as long as you're being calculated about how you invest into these assets, then like there's still massive upside despite you losing a few $100 in the interim. Not financial advice, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I've been trying to think like, man, I mean, dollar cost average seems to always be a good strategy, you know, just pick something up here and there. But yeah, I'm trying to think, okay, like you said, do I just eat some short-term losses and just lock in my you know, expected long-term gains, or do I try to ride it out, and do I try to pick up even more? And it's like I think my worst, probably my worst trade on VeVe is luckily it wasn't out of pocket or anything. I sold other things to get it, so like it's kind of relative, but I bought Secret Rare Goofy for like I think 3.3K, and now he's like 300, and it's like I could have had 10 of them if I would have, you know, sold because I sold Secret Rare Deadpool for like 3K and like a few Captain Americas. It added up to the Goofy, but it's like if I would have sold those and then waited, like held those gems until now, I could have had 10 Goofies. And it's like, okay, do I want to hang on? Like maybe instead of getting one more Todd, or Todd might not be the best example because it's a bit more expensive. You know, I could like double or triple if I'm a bit more patient, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough decisions.
It's tough, man. And it's tough because like a lot of these, you know, especially these collectibles, you see them for like $100, or like Big Barda, $89.99 in person. Rizzo, $69.99. Like Todd was like $130. Obviously, the first edition of the Blue Todd are worth more, but it's like, you know, you see these things in real life, and then you go back to VeVe and you're like, okay, this one's a 15,000, or this is like 10 times the physical component or counterpart. And it's like, okay, is this just a digital toy store, right? And it's like, that's the other thing, like people, you know, as we get more and more stuff, we get more and more stuff, we get more and more stuff, where there's like 15 Darth Vaders, every single Star Wars vehicle, four renditions of Walt, you know, like all these things that continue being dropped and dropped and dropped. Like, I think there's just going to be very few that will like be able to stand out, you know? And that's the hard part. Is like, are we just always going to continue to like dilute even with like more and more users, or are we going to get somewhere, you know?
Yeah, like you saying that like back in the day is like that really shifted my whole collecting philosophy and strategy, because like you said perfectly. I think you even said like last time that if you would have just collected the best of the best Pokemon cards, like you would have been a millionaire, but you know you spread out a lot. And it's like, and like when you said that, I had never thought that before, but it really made me like just know to hone in on like, okay, first edition, best of the best, because every single week they're dropping, you know, thousands and thousands of new editions of things, and we're starting to see, you know, multiple, like you said, multiple renditions of characters and everything. So I think 5, 10, 20 years in the future, we're at our 50th Darth Vader, you know, and only the first is really gonna be valuable, most likely, unless there's some kind of like special, like, oh, the 37th one only has 20 editions, you know, like some
Exactly.
weird anomaly like that. And it's like, yeah, I wonder how we're gonna get past that, because there can only ever be one first of everything. So it's like, how do they continue to add value to the second, third, fourth, etc.?
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I learned from Pokemon is like, you know, unlike having a master collector program, which VeVe will have, which could completely shift things, but like, you know, there was only few that stuck out, and it was like some of the stuff you wouldn't even like really anticipate. And it also shifted. Like, I'll give you an example, like Gengar, which is a Pokemon, is like the 10th most popular Pokemon, and like Envy and all these other ones, which no one really knew about like when it first started. Like, it was like this little purple blob, and like, you know, it wasn't really a huge thing in pop culture. And then Japan made it big. They had a lot of things and people liked it for the aesthetic. And then now it's like a really expensive card if you were to get like a first edition Shadowless, right? And it's like, it's those things now that I'm like looking back going, okay, what did stand out? Like, you look at Randy Chavez, you know, and kudos, like, big shout out to him, who's the, you know, I don't know how many friggin' millions he has now. It's like 140 million or something that he has, maybe crazy. More. Yeah. But he bought a trophy, like he basically made all this money and then bought a trophy Kangaskhan for $80,000 and then sold it for $280,000. And supposedly he has the highest record sell for that Pokemon card.
Oh man.
Yeah, and talk about going all in, right? Like, you think like, you know, you're going in at 80,000, the price of whatever, a really nice car, and then you go and sell it. Now you're getting like a Lamborghini, and it's like, and so he then invests, I think, a lot of that money back into Omi, is from the story that, like, you know, in a nutshell. And the crazy part is like, there's only like maybe 20 to 30 to maybe 40 cards in Pokemon that really can even get to price points like that. And a lot of them are, you know, based on pretty much scarcity, because there's fewer like really high grades, and clout aspect too. Like, you know, like having that card, you're one of few people to have it. And so like, that's what makes me think weird things about like the metaverse. And this is where we saw, you remember, I think it was Amazing Spider-Man, and only had like 1,000 editions. You remember that one?
The secret rare?
The secret rare had, that one had like 40 editions or something.
Which one are you talking about?
Like, I'm not talking about Amazing Fantasy 15. I'm talking about like
the comic.
I've got it somewhere. Yeah, it's like the black
of the comic. Like yeah. It was like one of the first limited edition comics on VeVe, right?
Yeah, it was like only 1,000 editions total, and then the secret rare had like 38 editions or something, right? Mm-hmm. So my only point to this is like, with scarcity, just like what I saw in Pokemon, like I wonder that like in the VeVe verse, Disneyverse or metaverse, wherever this ends up going, like if you are somebody that wants to stand out and get like a lot of social capital, you're going to have things that nobody else has. And so like that's where I think we could see, and I think what Wizard said this as well, is like we could see a pretty big retracement into the things that like are very few, far in between, that there's just not much of, you know, because like everyone else, yeah,
like maybe like Donnie or something like that. You thinking?
Yeah, because that Donnie is fuck you money. Like nobody buys a Donnie because they think it looks sick. You know what I'm trying to say? Donnie's like, I can buy this because it's a stupid, you know, unicorn. That's part of, you know, this. Don't get me wrong. Maybe they're a big Powerpuff Girls fanatic, but I don't know any billionaires walking around like Powerpuff Girl shirts. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they buy this just to be like in the VeVe-verse, to be like, hey, guess what? Like I'm a player. I'm a winner. I've got a lot of money. And like, you're going to be like, well, of course you do. Cause you wouldn't have bought that unicorn for $20,000 plus. Right.
Right. Yeah. That's a major flex. Is it's like, yeah, there's only, I'm in a very elite club who like not only has it, but is able to have it, is able to drop that kind of money on something like this.
Exactly. And then you see it on the blockchain and you're like, oh, he spent 70,000 on that in the bull market. And it's like, okay, clearly this person is somebody, you know? And so that's the interesting part. It's like, we might see a lot of that too, but then now they have the one of ones, which is like a whole other ball game. And
so true.
And you know, and then now is Donnie going to recede in value because now there's like just one of ones, and how many more one of ones are we going to have one of one collectibles soon? One of one wallets. You know, what if there's a one of one Donnie that comes out, a gold one Donnie? You know, what does that mean now for the white one? What if there's like a 75 edition Donnie? Like that's my point. Like there's just so many things to come, and so many, you know, influencers and community members and insights and conclusions to be drawn, that like, you know, maybe it's just as simple as like just collect what you love and shut up and don't think about it.
Yeah, I mean, hasn't David said that since the beginning? Like you're only going to be able to collect what you love, essentially, because no one's going to be able to keep up with every single drop.
Yeah, and buy Obi, because then it just it's accompanying everything, and it's like you don't have to worry about all this shit, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Like the more we like talk about all the contingencies and stuff, I'm like, oh man, it's like you're saying, there's probably like 100 variables that go into what could make a collectible valuable. But you know, if you want to turn your brain off a little bit, I think Omi is the way to go for that.
Yeah, it might be like the wiser investment long term, because like, you know, you're just on the sidelines and you're just like, okay, you guys do your analysis, you do all this stuff, you go buy your NFTs, and I'll just be here, you know, adding another $300 to my Omi bag and turning off and hanging out with my wife and my family or whatever. So
exactly,
you know, it is true, man. Yeah. So from your experience, like, is there anything that you think is like really important to tell people, that is something that like we might have not talking about, that like you've learned? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. It's like a hard thing to come up with, but I just feel like I often give the same insights and advice, and I'm like, I just want to share things that may be more unique, and you know.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with that sometimes too. I'm like, am I like repeating myself too much, or am I kind of like driving home the same points? But I think I would say like we kind of already touched on it a little bit, but just like there's so much uncertainty, and something can seem like a lock, and then it's not, or it goes even lower than you ever thought it might. And just I would say like if you're maybe feeling like you like have been missing out, or something is like unattainable, I would say like there's likely a chance for you to get it some way. Like, I mean, I think a really good example is for the longest time, like Secret Rare Spider-Man has been like out of reach for me, and it's probably my most wanted collectible that I don't have. But I'm thinking too, like, okay, I could, instead of just like sulking over the fact that I probably won't ever be able to have it, I'm like, okay, Omi to NFTs coming up soon. Maybe I, you know, put a bunch into Omi while it's 0.001 cents. And then, you know, if that Omi bag were to take off, then say I invested $1,000 into Omi at this point, and then in the future, like the value of Omi surpasses the value of Spider-Man so much more, then I could like that $1,000 turned into buying, you know, $100,000 collectible, or, you know, something like that. So I would say like, I would maybe say there's like a bunch of opportunities everywhere, whether that be like changing your strategy or being patient, or things of that nature. And just knowing that, because like, you know, when in November and December, like when Disney came out, I thought that was just the beginning, because like it finally, like VeVe finally popped, you know, like there were a few times where it popped a little bit, but like that was obviously the biggest one. I'm thinking, okay, like the world finally woke up. And then a few months later, the world went to crap. And then, you
Yeah.
know, and then then they all just everything came tumbling down so much. So yeah, I'm not sure if that might be too repetitive from what we kind of talked about earlier, but yeah, just like there's so many opportunities in so many different ways. And like, you know, even, you know, like we mentioned too, like there might be a project that none of us have ever heard of that is like, you know, doing VeVe type things, like revolutionary type things, and dropping really unique things that we just haven't seen. So yeah, that could be one thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, not to be so like just glued to VeVe alone, like to like basically get a larger breadth of the entire NFT space and what it means. And I recently did like a video, it was like a play to earn game called Wizardia, which was just like talked about like essentially how you can make like passive income from like letting people play in one of your arenas that you bought, right? And it's just like things like that where I'm not saying it's that game, but I'm saying there's so many other, like you said, NFT projects and really cool artists and different like design scapes. Like even, you know, Dr.Profit and I tweeted out this thing like with Anatomy, which was like a 3D like human skeleton with like organs and everything, and was used in like augmented reality. And like a lot of physicians now and like medical schools will probably likely take something like that on. So it's like a lot easier to like show people the inside of a human body without actually needing like a cadaver, you know, which is really expensive, right? So it's like
Right.
things like that are like here now. And so it's like just being able to be like more knowledgeable of the entire space, because then if there's like really great opportunities or investments, you'll know that like that would actually be able to change something or like revolutionize the system. And so like I think the whole NFT space right now is just like a huge opportunity. Like it's like a life-changing opportunity, and I think it's only going to happen really once, as because once we go physical to digital, like what is, you know, maybe there's like web 4, web 5 or whatever, but it's like you're kind of like into this whole new world now. So yeah, I think like you said it perfectly. I think the opportunities are endless out there.
Yeah, like I think a good example too is shout out to my boy Green Gobbler, but he you might see him on Twitter, but he started off on top NBA Top Shots, and then he saw that whole cycle of like of the wave up, and then like everything is super expensive and you can flip it easily, and then he saw how it crashed, and like once it got more diluted and everything, just how much the values went down. And so he had that experience first, and then he came on to VeVe. And so he already had seen an example of like an NFT project go through a cycle. And so he was able to like confidently like flips to go up and like be patient. So like, you know, just having that experience, which I didn't have, he was able to like capitalize on this VeVe opportunity so much more. Like, you know, I'm sure at first he may, I don't want to put words into his mouth or anything, but he may have thought Top Shot was like the next big thing. And then even though it didn't pan out exactly how, you know, people may have thought, like he used that experience to then make an even better opportunity with something better on VeVe.
Right.
So it's like there's something you can just apply knowledge, and like now I know that like for any future, like whether it's another VeVe bull run or whether it's another any type of market, like I'll have that experience of being like on the peak of the mountain and just seeing my vault, just, you know, my net worth, like things that I never thought they would ever be, and then I saw it all come crash down, and like just not, and instead of just always like constantly being on cloud nine, like, oh, this is never going down, oh, this is just the beginning, oh, like it can't get, you know, it'll never get become bad. It's like, okay, now I know I gotta be more grounded. I know what it's like to watch my value drop that much, and taking profits isn't, you know, it's not always a bad thing. Or like, you know, people talk about diamond hands or this and that. It's like, you know, there's something to be said for that, but at the same time, you know, you do like part of the point of it is investing, and if you never take profits, you'll never actually see that money.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, I think that's again like another, you know, amazing insight, because like for me, I'm not gonna lie, like there was some things that I did sell. You know, I didn't sell all of it obviously, but I kind of learned from what happened back in our day, like back in August, and seeing like how, you know, quickly like things rose up. And then I was like, hey, like how come I didn't get onto Todd when I was like, and it was more of a smaller scale, but like I remember like when Todd was like, you know, 79, then went to 200, then 300, then was like 800, 1.3, and I was like, holy shit, you know. So it's like that's the stuff now where I'm like looking back going, damn, like, you know, what am I going to know now for the next run? And the hardest part is just doing the opposite. Like the hardest part is being like, okay, you know, it just passed 11K and it might go to 100, but are you okay to get out at this amount even if it did? And then vice versa. Right now everyone's like, oh my god, this is going to shit, things are worth nothing. Like if you're like, this is the time to buy. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's like
Right,
when
right.
everyone else thinks it's not going anywhere, this is when you have to buy. And then when everyone else thinks it's going to the moon, that's when you have to sell. And it's hard to do. It's like, you know, it's easy in theory, but it's hard in practice.
Exactly. And like you said it best a lot in the past, like zig when everyone else is zagging, you know, and
Yeah.
that's usually how you are able to perform the best in markets, because like so much of it is just market psychology and just emotions, and it's pretty consistent across all markets and across all people. Like there's certain universal truths about investing that people follow certain trends or they see certain things and either get, you know, like it doesn't make a lot of sense to see if something has gone up 1,000% to think it's going to go up 1,000 more. You know, that's probably not too logical most times, but you know, but that's how that's sometimes. I know. I mean, I did it a lot. You know, like for example, I think the first tot I got was 400. Watched it go to 14K, or you know, like whatever it was, and I'm like, it's going to 100. You know, it's like, it's like I should probably tone it down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard because you feel the momentum. Like you feel
Big
like,
time.
right? And I think like some people time it off. Like I remember a lot of people timed it in December thinking MTL was going to come, and they sold a lot of things off, like Walt at 9K, Secret Spider-Man at 15, 16K, Marvel one at like 28K, thinking like that was the top. And then did little, you know, did everyone know there was another top?
Yeah,
Um, right. And so like, but at the same time, like a lot of those people still made a lot of money. And I think that's the hard part, is like you may not necessarily get out right at the peak and pull a Randy where he has like the highest sale Kangaskhan, but you can get close to that, right? Or you can get like and if you're in the green, you're in the green. So I think that's, and then on top of that, like, do you love what you have? Like, are you excited about renting it out? Are you excited about using it in the metaverse? Like, that's the other component to this, is like, it may not necessarily just being about like, did you sell it at the right time, you know?
exactly. That's a great point, because that's a lot of the reason why I didn't sell, even though I saw them go so high, because I'm thinking like, okay, I only have one of these. If I can rent it in the future, I could potentially make back what I could have sold it for and still hold it. And it's like, since we're so plugged in to what's happening, you know, we listen to the CEO talk about his future plans for this company, and like the vast majority of people aren't doing as much, you know, as like people that are deep into the VeVe community, as like researching, listening, talking to people. We have a very unique community, and we're able to bounce a lot of ideas off each other. You know, like just what me and you are doing right now. Like so many things I haven't even considered, but just by
Right.
talking to you, it's like getting into my head that can help me make a more, or just make a better decision, and just maybe see more angles and see where things could go right or where they could go wrong, and act accordingly.
Yeah, brilliant, man. Well, listen, buddy, it's been a pleasure having you on today. See, aren't these conversations the best? I feel like it's better just to kind of flow, and it's nice to have like, you know, some scripts and some direction. But I'm like, man, sometimes it's just better just to talk, fill it out, bounce off one another. And like I said, man, if you haven't subscribed, you know, to NFT Flenny, you know, go do so now. All his links will be in the description below on Twitter, YouTube, etc. And dude, it's been a blast. Really, really appreciate you coming on, man.
And man, it's been so much fun. I really, really appreciate you having me on. A true VV OG, a true legend. So thank you so much, man. It's been so much fun.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, let's do it again soon. We'll have to get you on when I go on with like Danny VR, comics and crypto, and a few other guys. It'd be fun to get like 6, 7 people up there and just like have this huge conversation, roundtable style. You know?
Oh man, I would love to. I would love to. Count me in.
Okay, perfect. All right, boss. Take care.
You as well, man.